Welcome back to the deep dive. We are doing something a little different today.
Yeah, definitely a departure from the usual.
Usually we look at history or tech, but today we are stepping into a reality that feels uncomfortably close to our own, yet fundamentally broken.
Oh, absolutely broken.
I want you to picture St. Louis, but not the St. Louis you might know. It is August. It is blistering, oppressively hot.
Just baking?
Right. There is a drought that has turned the entire Midwest into a dust bowl.
It is the kind of heat that makes people irritable. It makes them desperate.
Hmm.
And in the source material we are covering today, that desperation is compounded by the fact that the supernatural isn't just a myth. It is a regulated industry.
Exactly. A fully regulated industry. And that is our mission today. We are unpacking the case files surrounding the Gaynor case and the horrific Reynolds murders.
Yeah, those files are intense.
They really are. And this isn't a ghost story told around a campfire. This is a story about bureaucracy, corporate greed, and forensic science, all applied to things that go bump in the night.
Because it is a world where monsters have literally been legislated into existence.
Yes.
We're looking at a society where the Supreme Court, specifically in the landmark case of Addison v. Clark, ruled that vampirism is a legal condition. It is not a death sentence.
Which is such a wild concept to wrap your head around. I mean, we aren't talking about a secret underground world like you see in movies.
Right out in the open.
We are talking about a world where you might be stuck in traffic next to someone on their way to legally raise the dead for a client.
Just a Tuesday morning commute.
Exactly. And that is where we meet our central figure, Anita Blake.
Anita is the lens through which we view this entire world. And she is fascinating because she isn't a superhero.
Yo, not at all.
In the documentation we have, she is defined by her trade. She works for Animators, Inc.
Which sounds like a temp agency or, I don't know, a graphic design firm.
It really does.
Yeah.
And it operates almost exactly like one. In this reality, raising the dead, animism is a service industry. It has been a licensed business for about 5 years now. Before that, it was viewed as this embarrassing curse or maybe a tourist trap down in New Orleans.
A gimmick?
Yeah, a gimmick.
Yeah.
But now it is a trade. It is like selling insurance or fixing plumbing. You pay a fee and you get a zombie to do manual labor or to settle a will dispute.
That banality is what really struck me in the research, the sheer mundane corporate nature of it. Because Anita is an animator, but she's also a vampire executioner.
Yes.
And those two titles seem to be constantly at war with each other.
They are contradictory by their very nature. As an animator, she treats the dead as a product.
Right, a service to be rendered.
But as an executioner, she treats them as lethal threats. And the tension in these files comes from the fact that the legal system hasn't quite caught up to the reality of the food chain.
Right, because vampires have rights now.
You do.
The U.S. is the only country where vampirism is actually legal. They have lobbyists in Washington.
It's powerful ones.
There's even a movement mentioned in the text to give vampires the right to vote. They argue taxation without representation.
Which is a brilliant legal argument if you think about it.
Mm-hmm.
But it complicates Anita's life immensely.
I bet.
I mean, a few years ago, if she saw a vampire, she could just stake it. Now she needs a court order.
A literal warrant for execution.
Yes, an order of execution. Otherwise, it is technically murder. So right from the jump, we have this woman who deals in death, trying to navigate a legal system that is desperately trying to civilize monsters.
And speaking of civilizing monsters, let's open the file on the white goat incident.
Oh, yeah.
This really sets the stage for the moral landscape Anita's operating in.
It does perfectly.
Yeah.
And we have to go back to that heat I mentioned earlier, the drought.
Right, the Dust Bowl conditions.
The sources describe the grass in St. Louis as brown dead, just crunching underfoot everywhere you go. But then Anita and her boss, Bert Vaughn, drive up to the estate of a man named Harold Gaynor.
And the contrast is immediate. The source material specifies that Gaynor's lawn is an intense green.
Intense green, the sprinklers are just whirring away.
In the middle of a drought.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It creates a very specific atmosphere. While the rest of the state is drying up and rationing water, this man has a private oasis.
Yeah. It immediately tells you that Harold Gaynor believes his money exempts him from the laws of nature and the laws of man.
Yep. And the driveway.
I made a note of this detail, too, because it was so visceral. The driveway isn't just gravel.
No, it's crushed white rock.
It looks like hand-picked rock salt.
It is blinding in the sun. It feels sterile, hostile even. It is a landscape that has been completely forced into submission by wealth.
And that artificiality extends to Gaynor himself, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
When they finally meet him, he is in a wheelchair.
Yeah.
And he looks pleasant enough at first.
Kind of grandfatherly.
Yeah, double chin described as a beardless Santa.
But the eyes give him away.
Always the eyes.
Anita describes them as dark, eager eyes. And he isn't alone in that room. He has surrounded himself with muscle.
Right. We have Bruno, who is described as a martial arts type, and Tommy, who is openly carrying a .357 Magnum.
Just completely brazen about it.
And then there is Cicely.
Ah, yes, the trophy woman.
Yes, and her presence is deeply unsettling to read about. Gaynor introduces her, and the text describes her as looking almost vacant.
Like she's barely there.
She laughs without sound. Gaynor claims she is deaf, but Anita is highly skeptical of that.
Yeah, he makes a comment that really reveals his whole character right then and there. He says, I hate a woman who talks constantly.
It is chilling. It reduces her to a literal object.
An accessory.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that is the underlying theme of this whole meeting. Gaynor puts $1 million on the table. A cool $1 million.
Or Animators, Inc., that is a massive payday.
Huge. And all he wants is for Anita to raise a corpse.
But not just any corpse. He wants to raise a being that has been dead for 283 years.
Okay, we need to pause here and unpack the physics of this magic system.
Yes, let's do that. Because for a listener who doesn't know the mechanics of necromancy, the date might seem completely arbitrary. Like, why is 283 years the deal breaker?
Right, why not 50 years or 500?
And why did Bert, who we know is an incredibly greedy guy, actually hesitate?
This is where we get into the laws of thermodynamics as they apply to magic in this world.
Magic as a science, basically.
Exactly. Raising a zombie isn't just waving a wand and saying a spell. It is a strict energy exchange. You are bridging the gap between the living world and the grave.
Like overcoming resistance in an electrical circuit.
That is a perfect analogy.
Yeah.
For a fresh corpse, someone who's been dead a few days or maybe a few weeks, the gap is small. The energy required is minimal.
So what does that cost?
You might sacrifice a chicken. For something a bit older, maybe a goat. It is a one-to-one exchange of life force.
Animal life for human undead.
Right. But 283 years.
That is nearly 3 centuries.
The energy requirement scales up exponentially. Entropy has deeply set in. The soul or the animating force is too far gone.
It is rooted in the grave.
Yeah. To bridge a 3-century gap, a chicken or a goat is like trying to jumpstart a jumbo jet with a AA battery.
It just won't turn over.
It isn't nearly enough.
You need a power source of equivalent value.
You need a human life. And Anita knows the math instantly. She explains that for a zombie, that old Lun, the only death big enough is a human sacrifice.
And that is where the term white goat comes in.
It is a euphemism, and a polite one, which honestly makes it so much worse.
That's how much worse.
Gaynor just sits there and says, I will supply the white goat. He is politely offering to provide a human being to be murdered during the ritual to fuel the spell.
It creates this terrifying image of corporate murder. I mean, he isn't screaming or threatening initially. He is just offering a supply chain solution.
Right.
I will supply the goat. Like he is catering a lunch meeting.
It reinforces that he views human beings as completely interchangeable commodities, just like the water for his lawn.
If you have enough money, you can buy water in a drought and you can buy a life for a ritual.
That is his operating logic.
But Anita's reaction is immediate refusal. She just says, I don't do murder.
That is her hard line.
But Bert is the business manager for Animators, Inc. He is described as a rascal, a scalawag focused entirely on the bottom line.
Oh, yeah.
And his reaction is what really scared me in this scene.
Bert wavers. That is the true horror of the scene.
Mm-hmm.
He is physically pained by the idea of walking away from $1 million.
He can't stand it.
He actually turns to Anita and asks, couldn't you just kill lots of animals instead of just one?
He is trying to negotiate the exchange rate of a human soul.
He is literally doing the math. How many chickens equal one person?
Wow.
It strips away all the mysticism and leaves just raw, ugly capitalism.
But to his credit, when he realizes there is no workaround, that a human must die, he does draw the line.
He does. He says, no, I guess I can't help you either.
So now they have said no to a man who is used to buying whatever he wants, a man who has hired thugs and treats people like disposable objects.
The atmosphere in that room must shift instantly.
Oh, it turns hostile immediately. Tommy the gunman reveals his weapon.
He pushes his jacket back. It is a classic intimidation move.
They basically imply that Anita and Bert know way too much to leave the property alive.
And Anita is in a serious bind here. She is a licensed executioner. She usually carries a Browning high-power 9mm.
Which is a serious piece of hardware.
Oh, yeah. But she doesn't have it on her, does she?
No, she left it in the car because Bert insisted on being professional and not bringing weapons to a client meeting.
Big mistake.
Huge. So she is completely unarmed in a room with two armed thugs.
But Anita is a tactical thinker. She realizes they're in a losing position, and she needs to create a stalemate.
So she bluffs.
And it is a brilliant piece of psychological warfare.
How does she play it?
She acts very calm. She smiles. She slowly slides her hand to the small of her back, right where a backup piece would be if she actually had one.
Yeah.
And she asks Tommy if he wants to bet his life that she's unarmed.
That is incredibly risky.
It is incredibly risky, but she relies heavily on her reputation. She convinces them that even if Tommy shoots her, she will absolutely shoot him before she drops.
It is mutually assured destruction.
Exactly. And Gaynor, being a businessman who avoids unnecessary mess, calls off his dogs. He says no need for anyone to die here today.
And they walk out, but the threat is still hanging there.
Oh, yeah. Gaynor essentially says the police won't believe him anyway.
It would be your word against mine, he says.
And he is right. In this world, money talks just as loudly as it does in ours. Gaynor knows that he is functionally untouchable.
So they manage to escape the air-conditioned nightmare of Harold Gaynor's mansion. And where do they go next? This transition is my favorite part of the source material because it is so jarring.
It is a perfect juxtaposition. They go straight from a death standoff to a bridal shop.
The maiden voyage.
Located appropriately enough for this world, right next to the full dark beauty salon.
Right where the windows are blacked out.
Yeah, and you can get your nails done by a vampire.
Yeah. Of course.
Yeah.
Strip mall supernaturalism. I love that detail.
It really grounds the world. But Anita's not there to hunt vampires today. She's there for a dress fitting.
For a bridesmaid dress. And the description is hilarious, but also really telling.
Oh, it's awful. It is pink taffeta, Pepto-Bismols, colored, and looks like a petunia on steroids.
And she hates it.
She absolutely despises it. She says she feels like Frankenstein's bride.
Which is fitting, given her day job.
Right. But this scene isn't just about fashion crimes. It serves a very specific narrative purpose.
Okay, break that down for us.
When Anita puts on that dress, it exposes her history.
You mean it literally exposes it, her scars?
Yes. The dress is off the shoulder, and Anita's body is a map of her violence.
We need to inventory these because they really tell us who she is.
Let's do it. She has a broken collarbone that healed badly. She has jagged bite marks from where a vampire literally tore at her. She has a cross-shaped burn scar on her arm.
These are war wounds. I mean, in a military context, these would be medals. They are proof that she survived encounters that would easily kill most people.
Exactly. They are the resume of her career as an executioner. But in the context of the bridal shop, which represents polite society, they are treated as something shameful.
Something to be hidden away.
Yes. Mrs. Cassidy, the shop owner, won't even say the word scar. She calls it a problem or a mark.
That is so telling about the society she lives in. I mean, they rely on Anita to go out into the dark and kill the monsters so they can sleep soundly at night.
But they don't want to see the cost of it.
Right. They want her covered up in pink ribbons so they can pretend the violence doesn't exist.
Precisely. It is sheer hypocrisy. Mrs. Cassidy produces this hideous collar made of pink ribbon and fake orange blossoms just to hide the collarbone scar.
It effectively creates a mask for her.
Yeah. Anita can pass as a normal woman, but only by completely covering up the reality of her life.
And Anita just accepts it.
She accepts it because she loves her friend the bride. It shows her loyalty.
She is willing to be humiliated and uncomfortable just for the sake of her friend's wedding.
Right. But the profound irony is the moment she accepts the ribbon, reality crashes right back in.
The phone rings.
It is Detective Dolph's door.
Mm-hmm.
And the way Anita answers is great.
She is fighting with the ribbon, right?
Yeah, she's fighting the hoop skirt, trying to hold the phone, and Dolph just says two words on the other end. Murder scene.
And just like that, the ribbons come off.
She literally rips the collar off to take the call. It is a deeply symbolic shedding of that fake, polite persona.
She has to go back to being the executioner.
The normal woman role just doesn't fit her.
So let's follow her to the scene. This is segment 2 of our breakdown, the Reynolds murder. And this is where the tone of the material shifts radically from an urban fantasy procedural to straight forensic horror.
We are moving to a wealthy home in St. Charles. Again, we have this intense contrast. Skylights, a nice kitchen, a very domestic setting.
But the devastation inside is absolute.
Messy was the word Dolph used, and honestly, that was an understatement.
The descriptions in the source are incredibly graphic. The blood is described as fresh and fire engine red, even though the attack happened hours ago.
And that color is our very first forensic clue.
Walk us through that. Why does the color matter so much?
Normal human blood oxidizes. When hemoglobin hits the air, it starts to darken, turning brown or black over time.
Right, standard biology.
But if you walk into a crime scene hours later and the blood is still bright, oxygenated red, you aren't dealing with normal biology anymore.
You are dealing with magic.
Exactly. It is a chemical marker of the supernatural.
Okay, so now let's look at the bodies, or what's left of them.
Yeah.
The father is found in the living room under a sheet. Anita describes him as looking like a side of beef.
He has been entirely stripped of organs and flesh, just ribs and bone remaining.
And the mother.
In the bedroom. Her upper body is mostly intact, but her spine has been ripped out like a cord.
That is horrific. Just unimaginable violence. Now let's bring in Dolph's store. He runs the Spook Squad.
The regional preternatural investigation team. Dolph is a massive guy, 6'8", built like a professional wrestler.
But what is really interesting is his relationship with Anita.
He is a cop's cop. He deals strictly in facts and evidence, but he respects Anita immensely because he knows he is completely out of his depth.
He doesn't treat her like some civilian riding along.
No, he treats her like a specialist consultant.
Right, because standard forensic science just doesn't apply here. They are essentially looking for what didn't happen to figure out what did.
They are going through a rigorous process of elimination to identify the monster.
It is like a gruesome logic puzzle. Clue number 1 is no weapons.
The bones were snapped by hand. There are no saw marks on the bone. So whatever the killer is, it possesses immense superhuman strength.
Clue number 2 is the glass door.
Right. Something crashed straight through the sliding glass door to get into the house.
But there is no blood on the shards of glass.
Okay, so let's unpack the deduction process here because it's brilliant. Why does the lack of blood on the glass rule out a werewolf?
Because a lycanthrope, a werewolf, is still a living biological creature.
Exactly. Even if it is in a shifted wolf form, if it crashes through a glass door, it cuts itself and it bleeds.
No blood means the intruder was likely already dead.
Dead things don't bleed when you cut them because the heart isn't pumping.
Okay, so it's undead. So why not a vampire?
Vampires don't eat solid food.
Right.
The victim in the living room had his internal organs eaten. Vampires are hematophages. They strictly drink blood. They physically cannot digest a liver or lungs.
So if a vampire did this, the bodies would be completely drained of blood, but the flesh would be intact.
Exactly.
Okay. Why not a ghoul? Because ghouls do eat flesh, right?
They do. But ghouls are essentially scavengers. They're usually found lurking near cemeteries, digging up fresh graves.
And as Anita notes in the files, they are like wild animals.
They are frenzied. They would have destroyed the furniture, torn down the curtains, basically trashed the whole place into food madness.
But this attack was too targeted, too clean.
And St. Charles is way too far from the nearest cemetery for a ghoul to just wander in.
So that leaves the impossible option.
The hypothesis.
Yeah.
A flesh-eating zombie.
Now wait, I thought zombies just shambled around and moaned.
In the standard pop culture lore, yes. But in this specific world, there is a very rare variant.
Anita mentions there have only been 3 reported cases ever.
Right. These are sometimes called wet zombies. They don't rot nearly as fast as normal zombies.
They retain more of their muscle memory and human qualities for much longer.
Which makes them faster and significantly stronger.
And crucially, they are usually created or ordered by a very powerful animator.
That is the key piece of evidence. A zombie doesn't just develop a spontaneous taste for human flesh and navigate to a specific house in the deep suburbs by accident.
This isn't a random animal attack.
No, this is a weapon.
Someone sent it.
That is the terrifying implication. This is basically a guided missile made of rotting meat.
But the horror of the Reynolds house doesn't end with the parents, does it? We have to talk about the nursery.
This is undoubtedly the emotional core of the entire scene.
Anita walks into the child's room.
It's got little bunnies painted on the walls.
And sitting right in a patch of sunlight on the floor is a teddy bear.
Covered in blood.
Candy-coated with blood, as the text grimly describes it.
And there is a small, perfect, bloody handprint on the dresser.
Benjamin Reynolds, age 3.
But there's no body anywhere in the house.
That is the worst part. The parents are utterly destroyed, but the child is just gone.
Dolph asks the question that absolutely no one in that room wants to ask.
Yeah.
He asks if the child could have been eaten completely.
And Anita has to answer not as a human being, but as an expert.
She admits it is technically possible.
Yeah.
But she relies on her deep knowledge of zombie physiology again,
She notes there is no sign of regurgitation.
which is incredibly grim, but explain the logic behind that.
A zombie stomach can't actually process bones or large amounts of dense matter.
Right. If a zombie ate an entire 3-year-old child bone, and all it would likely get sick, it would leave a massive mess behind.
The fact that there are no physical remains suggests the child wasn't eaten,
He was taken.
which fundamentally changes this from a murder investigation to a kidnapping.
And it raises the massive question. Why does a flesh-eating zombie take a child?
Zombies don't have maternal instincts,
They don't take hostages either.
unless they were ordered to.
Exactly. So now they have a pattern forming, because this isn't the first weird death in the area, is it?
No. Dolph is deeply frustrated because he sees a clear escalation.
First, there was a homeless man found dead near a local cemetery. They dismissed it as a ghoul attack or maybe natural causes.
Then 2 teenagers in a parked car, also dismissed as a wild animal or a random monster.
But the Reynolds family changes everything.
It shatters the pattern entirely. It is deep in the suburbs. It is miles from any cemetery.
The monster is moving into the general population. It is getting significantly bolder.
So Dolph needs names. He needs to know exactly who in St. Louis has the raw power to raise a zombie this strong and this dangerous.
And Anita gives him the list. And it is a very short list because raising a flesh eater requires immense magical power.
The list is herself,
Manny Rodriguez.
Peter Burke, who is dead, so he is off the list.
And then she hesitates.
Because the next name is dangerous to even say out loud in this city.
Dominga Salvador.
The voodoo priestess.
The source material calls her the voodoo priestess for the entire Midwest. She is essentially the godmother of the local supernatural hierarchy.
And the police can't just go knock on her door and ask her questions.
I mean, they could, but she wouldn't say a word to them. And it might literally start a war.
The police have legal authority, but in the supernatural underground world, Dominga has actual power. Real ancient power.
Anita knows that if the police harass her, Dominga will either clam up entirely or retaliate with magic.
So Anita volunteers. She agrees to be the intermediary for the cops.
She is going to walk straight into the lion's den to ask the most powerful necromancer in the state if she happens to be raising killer zombies.
Which brings us to the preparation for that meeting. This gives us such a great, intimate look at Anita's daily life.
It is the morning right after the murder scene. She has only slept 3 hours.
Her apartment sounds like a literal cave.
It really reflects her life.
Yeah.
Heavy drapes to keep out all the sun, very dark.
She owns fish because, as she puts it, they don't demand overtime.
It is a very solitary, isolated existence.
But the way she gets dressed for this meeting, this isn't just putting on clothes for the day. It is tactical planning.
It is armor. She
Yeah.
puts on acid-wash jeans and Nikes, which are very practical for running or fighting.
But underneath, she's wearing an interpants holster.
Oh, what now?
It is a holster that sits totally concealed inside the waistband. She has a Firestar 9mm hidden right there.
And she wears a pink crop top to hide it.
Pink again. It keeps coming up.
She hates the color, but it absolutely works. It breaks up the visual line.
If she reaches up, the gun might show slightly, but otherwise she just looks like a normal young woman.
It is all about deception. She actively wants Dominga to underestimate her.
And she calls for backup. Manny Rodriguez.
Manny is a really fascinating character in this world. He is a senior colleague at Animators, Inc.
But he is also a sort of father figure to Anita.
He's described as having a thick mustache, very warm, very protective of her.
But he has a massive secret regarding Dominga.
A huge one.
Yeah.
Anita assumes he's just a solid, reliable backup. But Manny reveals that he wasn't just a colleague of Dominga Salvador.
He was her lover.
Whoa. That changes the dynamic completely.
It gives him a real in. Dominga might not talk to Anita Blake, the executioner.
But she will definitely talk to Manny, her old flame.
But Manny is terrified, isn't he?
He is incredibly cautious. He warns Anita explicitly. He says, if it comes to shooting our way out, Anita, it will be too late.
Meaning Dominga is just way out of their league in terms of raw magical power.
Exactly. They are going to accuse the most powerful magic user in the region of creating an uncontrollable monster.
You just don't do that lightly.
So let's look at the big picture here as we start to wrap up this deep dive. We have these two parallel plot lines running at the same time.
On one side, we have Harold Gaynor, the millionaire, who wants to literally buy a human sacrifice just to raise a 300-year-old zombie.
Corporate greed, entitlement, the sheer banality of evil. He represents the extreme danger of commodifying the supernatural.
And on the other side, we have the Reynolds murders. A rogue, flesh-eating zombie tearing apart families in the nice suburbs.
Raw, chaotic, unpredictable violence. The real question is, are they connected?
That is the million-dollar question. Is Gaynor somehow involved with the Reynolds case? Or is Anita Blake just having the worst week of her life dealing with two completely separate catastrophes?
The text doesn't explicitly link them yet, but the thematic link is undeniably strong.
Both cases basically involve the perversion of necromancy.
Right. In Gaynor's case, it is for ego and possession. In the Reynolds case, it is for pure destruction.
And stuck right in the middle of all of it is Anita.
She is fighting the monsters physically, but she is also fighting the system.
She is fighting the Mrs. Cassidys of the world who just want her to hide her ugly scars.
And she is fighting the Harold Gaynors, who think money just buys life and death.
And she carries the massive weight of the victims. That bloody teddy bear is going to haunt her.
She isn't just doing a 9-to-5 job. She is taking on the moral burden that the rest of society completely ignores.
It really makes you think about the definition of monster in this world, doesn't it?
It really does.
I mean, sure, the flesh-eating zombie breaking through your sliding glass door is scary. But Harold Gaynor,
Sitting in his wheelchair, smiling, offering to supply a white goat.
he is the one who truly chills me. The zombie acts on either blind instinct or direct command.
But Gaynor acts on fully conscious choice.
It is that chilling thought that the scariest thing out there isn't the dead thing clawing at your window in the middle of the night.
It is the person holding the leash.
Or the person writing the check.
Precisely. The monsters we make with our own hands are always worse than the monsters we find in the dark.
We're going to have to leave it right there for this deep dive. But there is so much more to uncover in this specific world.
We have honestly only just scratched the surface of St. Louis's supernatural underbelly.
Thanks for listening. Sleep with the lights on tonight.
And definitely check the windows.
See you next time.